Howdy Smite fans, it's J-Mac here. Week number 5 of the SPL is all wrapped up, and we had some pretty close matchups a couple of times and a few blowout matches this week. It's all over the place. We're just getting started with our second half of the phase, so let's take a look back in week 5 and see what all happened in this week's episode of the SPL Weekly Recap. Well, day 1 of our weekend started with the Camelot Kings up against the Tartarus Titans. And this set was a slow but methodical bleed out in favor of the Camelot Kings. Captain Twig and Variety controlled the pace of game 1, and Captain Twig yet again, but this time with Netroid, set up the team for victory to take a 2-0 set win over the Tartarus Titans. And then next up was the Atlantis Levitas against the Oni Warriors. And game 1 was balanced on a knife's edge the entire way through, but one overextension in the late game from the Warriors led to a near deicide. But as the Leviatans pushed into the Titan, Cubo Fred finds a massive 4-man powwow in the base, and with Vote spawning at that same moment, the two of them fended off the Levis and then pushed back to take game number 1 for the Warriors. Game 2 gave us a reminder at just how good the mitigation Robin can be, as the Oni Warriors rolled through the Leviathans in just under 24 minutes to take the set and the game 2-0. And our Saturday kicked off with the Jade Dragons against the Valhalla Valkyries. In the Dragons draft, a bit of an oddball comp for game number 1, but it completely ignored a lot of its weaknesses, running down the Valks for a game 1 win for the Dragons. In game number 2, it's the Valks with an odd draft that almost worked out, but the Dragons team fight late was just too much to handle, and the Dragons win out over the Valks 2-0. And then our second set of the day with the Solar Scarabs and the Olympus Bolts definitely kept things a little interesting. Game 1 was, simply put, clean play from the Scarabs. Map and objective control and good team fighting netted them a win in game number 1. The early rotations in game number 2 from Haddix allowed the Bolts to be able to find sneaky picks up against the Scarabs, putting Inbound and Baronic just too far behind, and the Scarabs couldn't fight back at really any point of the game, with the Bolts taking game 2. Game 3 was all about the mid 2v2, and the Bolts had that in spades. Lasbra and Venenu dominate the middle of the map and push the Bolts to a 2-1 win over the Scarabs. Well, our triple header Sunday kicked off with the Oni Warriors up against the Solar Scarabs. While things looked hopeful early in game number 1 for the Scarabs, things just went from bad to worse as the game panned out, and Dardas and Vote dominated the board for the Warriors to take game 1. And all that momentum carried into their second game, with Cubo Fred keeping the right side of the map blocked down, and the set goes 2-0 over to the Oni Warriors. Set number 2 was between the Valhalla Valkyries and the Camelot Kings. And this is a hard one to break down in all honesty. I really can't say much more than it was just a beat down by the Kings. Complete dominance in game number 1, and a slower but equally oppressive game number 2 netted the Kings a near perfect 2-0 win over the Valhalla Valkyries. And our final set of the day was between the Atlantis Leviathans and the Tartarus Titans. For the first time in what feels like a good while, we got to see what happens when Zapman is given leeway in a lane. Both games were close early, but team fight out of the Leviathans swung the door wide open for them to push back the Titans' more unorthodox style of drabs and squeak out a 2-0 set to close out our week for the Leviathans. And there you have it. Week number 5 is all complete, and we got to take a look at the standings one more time to see how things panned out this week. The Camelot Kings still remain at the top of the standings in number 1, and a nice solid grouping of teams right in the middle, with just feeling like any of these teams could take a set off of each other. Week number 6 is sure to have some explosive sets, so you're not going to want to miss out on that. Make sure that you catch up on all the action over on our SmiteVod YouTube channel, catch the behind-the-scenes content over on SMITEPro, or tune in live right now on twitch.tv/SmiteGame for Week 6 of the SMITEPro League.